Right, we're going to go through building the Scalextric car using the Boxford chassis and the Hornby motor and pack of bits. We'll start by doing an unpacking of the actual parts so that we get to see what actually comes from Hornby to go in the chassis. Right, so we've got the Hornby bag of bits. We'll open that up and take out the contents. Okay, so we should have 4 tyres, and to go with the 4 tyres, 4 wheels. We should then have 2 axles. Now the axles are slightly different. The front axle has got 2 knurled sections. You can see just that serrated section at the end there. That has one at either end, serrations at either end, but nothing in the middle. The rear axle has serrations at either end, but it also has a serration in the middle. Important that we don't get those mixed up. We should also have 2 sets of gears. We should have a set of pinion gears, and then we should also have a set of bevel gears. The bevel gears that we'll be using for the chassis we're using. We should have a little braid holder, and then the actual blade that goes in the track blade. And then the last thing we should have is a bag with 2 braids in it. Should also have 2 tiny little metal shoes and a little black screw. I'm not going to open those yet because they very easily get lost, and I'll keep the 3 bags to one side. And then, and of course, your motor. And then what we'll do is we'll start having a look at putting all these bits together. Right, next we'll have a look at the chassis pieces. You may find that some of the waste pieces are still actually in there. You can either poke them out with a paintbrush handle or a screwdriver just as easily. And what we're trying to do is make sure that nothing's in these holes. Everything that should be clear is clear. If you don't, one of the problems that you get is when you start using the capillary, it can sometimes glue these sections back up before you've had a chance to actually put the pieces in there. Right, so I'll get rid of all the little bits that we don't need. And what we should have is 2 chassis sides, a front section that holds the pickups, 2 motor cross sections, and the rear bumper. Right, there isn't a absolutely easy way to put these things together, but one of the things you must do is make sure that you put them together in a certain set order, otherwise you'll find it's nearly impossible to get some of the bits. Okay, so we've brought us motor in there, and we're going to bring in the bevel gear and the pinion gear. The 2 pinion gears that come in the set are not the same. Unfortunately, you can't use one in place of the other. If you're using the white gear set, you must stay to the white gear set. If you've got a different chassis to the one we're using, you could use the black gear set. Again, it's a matter of choice how you've designed your chassis. We designed this chassis to work with the white set. Right, we're going to start with the white set of gears. The rear axle, which as I said has got the serration in the middle, and we'll start by putting the pinion gear on the motor. Now it's important to notice there's a collar on there, and that must go down towards the motor. What we're trying to do now is we're trying to push that down so that it actually goes down to the end of the serrations. So I'm trying to push it so that you can see. So almost to the end. It's important there's a little pip sticking out there. What that does is when we place the gear on the rear axle, bevel gear, what it does, and what I'm doing is I'm trying to make sure that the gear is as near the middle of the serrations as possible, so there's no serrations showing out via the side. What that does is that pinion actually engages into the gap. There's effectively like a channel in the bevel that engages into, and it helps make sure that the axle isn't sliding up and down and keeps the gear locked to the two gears locked together. Okay, so now let's look at bringing in the chassis pieces. What I'm going to do to start with is take the right hand side, and I'm going to take the front section, and I'm going to, using our acrylic solution, bring some of that up and make a little puddle. I'm going to just do a weld down there just to help hold that on. All that will do is just make life a little bit easier later on, and then I'm going to put that down, give it a chance to dry. Right, so you'll notice that the bulkhead has a flat on the bottom. That matches with the flat on the bottom of the motor. Bring those two together. Stops the motor spinning when the whole system is running. And then we'll bring the other bulkhead on. That's just round, that sits on the back. There should be a nice fit, just to help things so that things don't drop apart when you put them together. Right, we'll bring in the chassis and initially offer those two together. As I say, when you put that together, the solder tags should be on the top, so that what you've got there is the basic system put together. And then when we bring in the axle, I'm going to put the axle in bottom down, and what that should do is that should, as I said, go together with the pinion sticking into that U section. Right, now then, we need to bring our other side of the chassis in together now, and because we've glued that front, it should be a matter of locate the axle, but try and make sure it doesn't drop down. Locate the axle. What we're doing is hold the axle in there, which then should allow the two sides to go together, and finally the whole thing drop together on the front section, so that we need to double check that the gear's in the right place and that it's held with the motor before we finally put some glue on there. And then the last thing we're going to do now is gently put the whole thing down and then start running some capillary glue, just making sure that everything's held together while we run the glue in there. Capillary the glue into the four bulkheads, sides, and into the front. And then the last thing we need to do is bring up the rear bumper, put that in place, and capillary glue that. So give it all another run round to make sure that there's plenty of adhesion there, that everything's held well. Same with the front, so we know that a car should survive as many bumps and bruises as possible. So that's the assembly of the basic chassis. Okay, so we've come in as tight and as close as we can, and I'm going to do my best to try and keep this all on camera. So what we've got there, as I say, is we've got the actual blade. And then again, looking at the blade and deciding which way is front and which way is the back, that's the front, sorry, that's the back, that's the front. What we're going to do now is assemble the electric pickups, so that what they do is, what I'm trying to do is get that assembled so that drops in like that. So what you've got with the actual solder section at the front, you've got the tag going towards the back. Same again on the other side. I apologise for covering it up with my big fingers. So that what you've got then, you've got two pieces on there, literally ready to take the wires. Apologise for the hammering, this is a workshop. So what we're going to do is, I'm actually going to solder them at this stage because I've found that it's easier to solder them with the braid holding them on. So now I'm going to put the braid on. Now if you actually look at the braid holder, there's two ridges at the top. So that was where. What we're going to do is take one of the braids and, starting ridge face down, we're going to place the braid into the piece so that it goes just over halfway down between the two. Then we're going to take that round back through the side and then let that sweep back, so that what we've got there is a whole section, the braid going effectively half round right here. Now I'm going to do exactly the opposite mirror image on the other side. So what we're doing now is we've got the braid going round, past the bump, back in the slot and then sweeping back. So we now have the two braids on, so that what you've got is it partially wrapped around there with the two braids sweeping back. Yeah. I'm going to take the pickup block and placing the braid on. I'll take this a little bit wider so it's easier to see. You can see my studio marks now. So what I'm going to do is taking the block, holding it at the front, and I'm going to take the braid with the pips facing down so that the actual two loose braid sections are facing up like that. Slide that on the back, he says, so it falls straight off, so as I show you. Slide that on the back so that as it goes over the front and then locks back. So I'll see if I can do this in a way so that what you've got is you've got that when the two go together. See if I can show you that in a different way. So what we're doing, we've got the two pieces like that, and effectively that is going to trail in the back edge, try to hop over the front like that, and then slide over the front and then press back so that it's gone over the front and back, so that what happens is the trailing edge catches underneath, goes over the top and then drops back. Now, we're then going to bring over the chassis, place the pickup on the front of that. We then need a little positive screwdriver, not quite small enough. And then holding that with a finger, what we want to do is place that into, screw that into the plastic, and the way I work is I screw it up till it locks and then go back a quarter turn. So you should be able to, you can't move it freely, you want to go back a bit further. That should sit there nicely now, moving. If it wobbles, then you'll have trouble. It should move quite nicely, and what it's doing is it's using that screw as a washer on the front section. Okay, so as I said, we're going to connect the wires up on the car. What I found is if you actually make the wire about 15mm either way, either end longer than the car, so you've got yourself. What that will do is, it's useful sometimes to have two different colours of wire, just makes life easier. So about 15mm either way longer than the car, and then we're going to strip 3mm at one end of each wire, and place those in the front, straight into those pickups. And then you can, if you want, crimp those, so that if you don't want to solder, you can actually crimp those on to start with. Depends how good you are with the soldering iron, whether you're confident or not that you could solder those two sections. And I'm trying to find an easy way where you can see them. Actually, try to turn the car around forwards. So what we've got is the two wires sat in there. Now then, as it's turned out, one of them is sitting quite nicely and the other one is almost fallen out, so I'm going to go in gently with a pair of side snips and just gently knit the tops together. If you press too hard, you will cut the tops off. So that's the two, I've just nipped the two together there. It will help me a little bit when I come into solder. Sharpest soldering iron you could possibly find, and then I'm going in. There's one soldered. That's the second. So we've got two nice soldered joints there. And as those wires come out, the next thing that we're going to do is, using a finger, we're going to wrap the wires round your finger once. So that what we're doing is we're forming in the wire a little circle like that. What that does is it helps take all the stress. So what we've got there is a nice little circle, so that as the car is moving and those wires and the actual blade is twisting, those wires are moving and that circle helps take up any stress on the wires, so that what you're doing is you've got everything on that, there's as little pressure as possible on that blade to try so that it can turn as quickly as possible without bouncing out. Right, so we've got a little bit of spare wire there, so what we'll do is we'll cut those to length and then bare 3mm on one wire, 3mm on a second. Now, what I'm going to do now is, just to make life easier, I'm going to gently lift up those tabs, so that what we can do now is actually give the wire at the end a twist, so it doesn't fray. I'm going to actually poke that wire through that hole. If I try again. So what we're doing is poking that wire through that hole. And then, don't try to do the other one. We'll solder that one while it's held. There we go, nice and soldered. And we'll do the same with the other. Twist the end so it doesn't fray, just like you would with cotton in textiles. When you're threading a needle, do that one and solder. So what we've got on this one, I've actually got the wires going plus the same side to same side, so if you actually look, it's same side to same side. Now I think, if memory serves me correct, with the bevel on the bottom side, that will mean that the motor runs in the wrong direction. But we'll continue assembling it with a view that it might work. Okay, so we now need to put our tyres on our wheels, which a lot of that is just about strong fingers and brute force and ignorance. Make sure that when they're on, they're sat as snug as they can. You don't want any bumps on your tyres, otherwise your car will run unevenly. Work its way through the others. So that what we're doing is, as I said, making sure that that one there isn't quite sat properly. Make the tyres as uniform as possible. Right, so we're now going to assemble our tyres on our axles. On a slippery table like this, it can sometimes not be as easy because they do resist going on. Part of what you want is them being strong. I have seen them hammered on before today, but you've got to be careful you don't overdo it and you don't want to crack your chassis. I'm going to go and fetch a hammer. Right, as I say, you've got to be careful you don't overdo this, as you can very easily nip the chassis. Trying to get the wheels within about a millimetre of the side, so make sure that everything runs free. That's close enough there, so one's about 2 mil, one's about, so if you do go a bit too far you can twist them back, but it's amazing how much stress you put on the chassis. And then we'll put the front ones in. Make sure that the axle goes underneath. Make sure the axle goes underneath the wires. That way then, if you want to get to maintain them, you can do. And again, to within about a millimetre, 2 millimetres of the chassis. And there you go, that's your basic racing chassis. Right, so that's the chassis we've just assembled, running quite nicely. On our test track. The electrical setup was correct.